Welcome to Beneath the Surface. I'm your host, DJ Lester. This is a show where we go beyond the headlines, beyond the highlights, and beyond the labels to uncover stories that shape who we become. Every conversation is rooted in resilience, growth, and the moments that define us. Because every person has a story, and there's always more beneath the surface.
Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Beneath the Surface. I'm your host, DJ Lester, and today we have a special guest with us, Miss Ruth. She's somebody that played an integral part in our childhood. She's one of the moms of the team. She did a lot of things behind the scenes that nobody saw. And so for that, I'm forever grateful for her. So today, I'm going to have Miss Ruth introduce herself. So Miss Ruth, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hi, my name's Miss Ruthie. I worked at LCA for quite a while. My son and daughter also went there. I drove a school van for the first year that I worked there. I started working there in 2001. I lived in West Jordan, and the school had me driving a bunch of children that wanted to go to Layton Christian Academy from the Salt Lake Valley up to Layton every day. And so that was my first job. And while I was there during the day, I was the housekeeper, and they had me doing a lot of different things, filling the candy machines and just wherever I could help out. And then at that time, when I first started working there, the school, they needed a bus driver. And so the school paid for me to become a bus driver for the school. And I started driving the bus in the afternoons. I would drive to the games, and I drove the boys to practices for basketball and for football where they needed to practice. So that was fun. I just tried to make myself available to the school for whatever they really needed me to help with, whatever I could help with. And
Yeah,
my kids got to get a great Christian education in the meantime, because I actually got to work. I was a single mom, and
yeah.
I met Bobby Porter through another family, the Augustines. I got to
Okay,
meet
yeah.
Bobby Porter, and I lived in Salt Lake at the time. And he says, we're really looking for somebody that can work at the school, and if you wouldn't mind, being the van driver and bringing all the kids up, that would be great. That would be part of your job. And I'm just like, okay, I guess I can do that.
Yeah.
But it did make for long days because, the kids would have to get up at 6. We'd have to leave the house at 7 to make it to school by 8:15
Yeah.
every day.
The whole
But I can
commute.
proudly say I didn't miss not one day of work that whole year. I
Man,
even came to work one day, with 102 fever, and they sent me across the street to the secretary's office to sleep. And then I drove back home in the afternoon. Yeah. So I just did
that's
whatever the school needed for me to do.
Yeah, that's dedication. Thanks for sharing that for sure. It just goes to shows like your will and tenacity, you know what I mean, to get all the things done that you needed to get done. And also thank you for that.
hmm
I was gonna ask, so what was your background? Like where were you born at? Where'd you spend your childhood years at before coming to LCA?
was born in California. I moved to Utah with my family when I was 19 years old. I'd already been to junior college for 1 year. We moved to a little town called Holden. It's down by Fillmore, which is in the center of the state. I moved from a suburb in California with 48,000 people to Holden, Utah, population 250. I was 19 years old. 19 years old. I didn't go to school with anybody. Um, and then everybody my age was already married on their mission for the Mormon church or away at school. So I just got a job, and I worked at Fillmore Hospital, and I started out just washing dishes, and then I ended up being the head cook supervisor when I was about 23 years old. And yeah, and I came to Salt Lake, moved to Salt Lake when I was 24, 25 years old, somewhere right around there. Moved up to the big city, from the,
Yeah.
the small town.
Upgrade,
Yeah,
upgrade.
I was upgraded to the big city. Yeah. And then I got married and had my kids. And then in, let's see, 1999, became a single mom. And then about a year later, I met the Augustines at church. They kind of took my son in, you know, because he didn't have a dad around, took my son in and kind of made him one of their boys. And then they were in contact from Salt Lake Christian Academy. My son went to there. And then that's how we met Bobby Porter, and then that all ended up with me taking my kids and being able to go, them to have a Christian education in a private school. So, because I would have never been able to afford to do that,
Yeah,
but at the school, if you worked there, then your kids got to have tuition free. I had to pay for some things, but the tuition part, was a great blessing for me. So they blessed me with my kids being able to go there. And I guess I blessed them too for doing what I do. So I don't know. I just be myself, that's just me. So I just like to help wherever I can. So
yeah, that's a good. Thanks for answering that question. It kind of showed me the correlation because obviously I remember the Augustines and I remember Coach Porter as well. And I know this kind of
mhm.
where I feel like our stories kind of connected. So I know me, like I was saying earlier, like I was going through different schools. I went to Sunset, I was at Clinton, I was at Hillfield, bounced around and whatnot. So initially I was supposed to come to Solid Christian Academy my seventh grade year. And so that's when the school has shut down. Yeah, the school has shut down that year. And so that's how
Yeah,
I
and
caught
that's where
Bobby
Bud
Porter.
Bud went there for a couple of years, and they played basketball together. The Augustine boys, my son, Lee Harmison, a few people like that, And they were the boys that I would take to school every day. I'd pick them up and a couple more people along the way,
Yeah.
Lyman Bangeter and a whole bunch of the boys like that,
Yeah,
They
Brian,
were riding
Lyman.
on my van.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
poor.
crazy to kind of see the correlation of how everything kind of played out. Go ahead.
hmm
So, but
Yeah, I
no,
felt
it's
bad for Erin. I felt bad for Erin, but she was kind of spoiled because she was the only girl on the van. So all the rest were all the boys. I had 12 boys or 13 boys and Erin.
yeah, yeah, it's crazy to kind of see the correlation and shit. Like even from my lens, kind of seeing the whole 360 with all how everything kind of unfolded. Like me supposed to come to Solid Christian, then the school shut down that year, and then
hmm
so that's what, like you said, you met Coach Porter. Coach Porter came down to Layton Christian Academy, and then so he had reached out to my mom, my adopted mom at the time. So yeah, we're gonna be Layton Christian Academy. You should bring it to Layton Christian Academy. That's how I get
That's
kind of.
what he said to Dean and me. You know,
Yeah,
the boys need to be up here. The kids need to be up here because Aaron had gone there for a year with Jasmine Porter.
yeah,
So he says no, they need to come up here. And that's when I guess somebody talked about me driving a van. 15
yeah,
passenger van every day. They did it for 1 year, and then after that, they said it was a little bit too expensive or something to do that.
yeah.
So that's
No,
when I
thanks for
moved up
answering.
there.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for kind of showing that correlation. You know what I mean? It kind of just
hmm
time, hitting that bridge or whatever. So with that being said, so obviously, you bounce around and stuff like that, trying to figure different things and kind of doing what it took for your kids and yourself, right?
hmm
So when you came to Layton Christian Academy, what was your thoughts about our group when you first came encounter with us?
with all the boys and
Yes. Uh huh.
just thought it was pretty cool. I mean, the coaches, they didn't let you guys get away with nothing. I mean, you had to have respect. You had to have, you know what I mean? That they taught you dedication. And I was watching all this from the sidelines, being a mom, but I also
Yeah.
worked at the school. I was a mom of, my son was a student there and my daughter, but I got to see, a different side where people that didn't work at the school and see everybody every day, they know that the school is good, but they don't see the the outcome, how the boys, because you guys all treated me with total respect,
Hmm.
and I was just like, I'm just the housekeeper, you know. I
Yeah.
would get that thing, why are they being so nice to me or, but I saw, that that's just what the school was about, they wanted to teach young men how to be young men. They wanted to teach, the girls, this is the way you're supposed to act, and for me, I, was so happy that I had took the job, just so that my kids could learn what they needed to learn, you know.
Yeah, no, that's a great insight. Like I said, I think that kind of falls back to because Coach Porter used to preach to us about being Renaissance men, right? And so
Mhm.
how I was is always about you respect your elders, you respect the people who take care of you. So that's how I spent like the 10 years in Nigeria. Kind of learned that. So Coach Porter kind of like tapped into that because I was just 6'7", 6'8", you know what I mean, very
Uh,
tall,
he's a
lengthy, and so
big,
he
big
didn't take
giant of a man,
he was a big dude. He didn't take no nonsense from anybody. When he raised that eyebrow, everybody serious. You know, I'm just like, okay, Coach
Uh-huh.
Boyer, you know what I mean? So we all kind of like tap into that. So that's what I felt like kind of taught us a lot of lessons. Like, hey, like you respect the people. 'Cause you was talking about it. Take care of the people, take care of you. You know what I mean? Like, 'cause you guys were doing the
Mhm.
extra work, like the lunches, the food, and he always want to make sure we take care of the people that take care of us all the time. And so I feel like that was kind of where it kind of came from. So, no, that was a great answer to that question. I appreciate that. So, as you come to LCA, you kind of seen that group. Obviously, you was in Salt Lake Christian with like Jeff Ryan, Lyman Bangeter, all these other ones that we played against. 'Cause we played with them at Job Corps before, at Clifford Job Corps, you know, as we kind of bounced back and forth. So we kind of had like a little bond with them. But when you came to Layton Christian Academy, when Bud came over there, your kids all came to Layton Christian Academy. Did you feel like that core group of Layton Christian Academy would become as close as we became at the time?
I think I realized it right away, but within the first year or so, it was just naturally happening. It wasn't something that was forced. It wasn't something that was, it's just that everybody was caring about each other. That's what
Yeah.
I found.
Yeah.
The kids, the kids would, if somebody, like for instance, one day somebody was crying, there was two girls talking. One of them was crying, the other one was sitting there praying for that person. You know what I mean? And you don't see that in public school. You don't see that anywhere else. You know what I mean? So the environment there was great. The kids felt comfortable. This is what I'm noticing from the sidelines, while I'm doing
Yeah.
my work during the day. I'm very observant. So I just noticed little things, or how this person's talking to that person, or there's no yelling, there's no nothing. I thought it was pretty great.
Yeah, it was definitely like a different approach, and I felt like, you know, because I know me, like I came to that school as a hothead, you know, like getting kicked out of schools, being isolated in corner classrooms, being called stupid as down. So it's like it was when I came to LCA, like they did a whole article, you know, and to kind of talk about some of the problems I was having. But like when I came to, like, I felt like their approach to people different. I don't like being yelled at because, you know, going through my childhood and foster care, I always got like cussed out. I always got yelled at. So I don't like being yelled at. You can talk to me, ask me something, and I'll get it done, right? But don't sit there and yell at me as
Uh-huh.
a person. But because I feel like their approach was completely different from everybody, from Miss Elmy to Mr. Hembrock to Coach
Uh-huh.
Porter, the Millers, like, you know what I mean? All them people came in, like, they would talk to me and say, hey, like, okay, you know, this is what you did wrong. Like, you know, kind of point out the obvious. And I'm like, okay, yeah, I see my wrong, but why you're not correcting other people? You know what I mean? Because I started learning throughout other people, the people, like, what they people did to get away with a lot of stuff. And so I felt like their approach was a little bit different, kind of changed my perspective for a lot of things and kind of helped me come back to earth, I guess you could say, and kind of see things in a different limelight. So,
Uh-huh.
thanks for your answer to that. So I think that kind of went a long way. So as far as that goes, what do you think overall stood out to you as a parent about all of us, our core group at that time when you first came to LCA?
I don't know. With all the boys and such, they treated each other like brothers, not like, they were friends, but they were brothers at the same time. You know, if one of you was hurting, then the rest of them was hurting, so that's very important. You know what I mean? Especially if
Yeah,
you're somebody that doesn't feel like they belong to start with, and then, all of a sudden you got these brothers that are praying for you if you hurt your ankle, say in a basketball game, or you got all these boys that are just, they're your friends, but they also care about you at the same time,
yeah.
so, I mean, there's some people that say that they're your friend, but it's just on the surface, but you could tell that these boys really loved each other. You know what I mean? They were a team. They cared about each other. That's the part that I noticed from my perspective.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that perspective. And I think, yeah, you were right about that. And I think we all came from somewhere, and we all kind of just built on that bond and that camaraderie we had with each other, and that kind of rolled
Mhm.
us, you know, all the way to when we graduated and left the school. Basically, you know, that bond kind of carried
Yeah.
on to the finish line. How we ended things, we'll come back and talk about the ending here in a second, but how things
Yeah.
kind of unfolded like that last year was just amazing. You know what I mean? To kind of be able to put everything together and come out on top of everything was just something that was amazing. It was
Mhm.
something that combination we started back in seventh grade, you know. So with anything worth happening, you gotta, you know, manifest in the greatness, plan and water it, take care of it, and
Mhm.
it kind of goes to the end. So thanks for that perspective. So we kind of go into the parents' perspective now. So as a parent, what do parents normally see that the most athletes don't see or most people miss?
I don't know, unless the kids tell the parent, that my teacher was saying this, good things about me or whatever, if the parents don't see that happening, sometimes they're not sure if that's really, what's been going on. Me, I had an advantage above other parents because I was actually at the school. And I got to see my kids interacting with other kids. I got to see my kids, interacting with the teachers and just on a daily basis, that was nice, for me to be able to be there. But a lot of the parents, they just say, they've never seen teachers, or coaches that care so much about their students. A lot of them had told me that, the parents that I had been in contact with, that's why their kids, they continued to send their kids to LCA for all those years, because my boys, my group of boys, they were together from seventh grade to graduation. I mean, they were there the whole time, and so I got to know most of their most of the parents I got to know, along the way. So from my perspective, I had it easier than some because I could see it on a daily basis what was going on. But by
Yeah,
most
thanks for
parents
that.
that I did talk to,
Yeah, thanks for that answer. And I was gonna say, so that kind of leads into what sacrifices do parents make that athletes or students don't, or the kids don't really see at a time when everything's happening? What would you say?
what was the question? What was the
Well,
question?
what sacrifices do parents make the athletes or students don't see at a time?
Well, I mean, it takes a lot. I mean, some of the parents, number one, the cost, because, it is kind of expensive for some people, but they want
Yeah,
their kids to have a good education. So they're willing, to be able to do that, whatever it takes. Like me, I was able to work there. Otherwise, my kids wouldn't have been able to go there. A lot of, they take their time, they go to the games, they help out any way they can. The parents do, so it's just, I don't know. I just enjoyed being there.
yeah, yeah. And I think you touched on a couple core key things. You talking about as far as like make sure your kids are educated, get the best education. And
Hmm.
you made a lot of sacrifices on your part, what I mean, just being there, the drives, what I mean, the long days, the long hours, just to
Yeah.
maintain, you give your kids the best, education, the best lifestyle, the best opportunity, to be successful. And it kind of paid off, what I mean? As you look at it now, your kids are doing great things as well too. The people you mentored or was around kind of doing great things as well too, you know.
Uh-huh.
So with that sacrifice kind of happening, what would you say it was like watching us kind of go through sports, like your boys, your core group of boys that kind of led through that and kind of the pieces that came in after that? What would you say it was like kind of watching us go through sports?
Well, I enjoyed watching you grow. You know what I mean? You all grow. I mean, you started out, seventh grade. That's, little stinkers, man. But you grew into wonderful men, by the time you graduated, it's like, wow. I just kept saying, wow, these are my boys, that's all I kept saying. I said, they treat everybody great, So that, for me, that was a privilege to be able to watch, everybody's growth from the time they were, younger to the time they got, were, in my opinion, almost grown men, and
Yeah,
it was very enjoyable for me.
yeah. So man, that was great. You know what I mean? I think just kind of having you always on the sidelines and just being part of that kind of played into a part too. And just as much as we talked about earlier, a lot of us didn't have a lot of cheerleaders in the stands, whether mom, parents, grandma, something like that, but I always see your face in the stands. So I was kind of proud, a lot of happy faces to all of
Yeah.
us because you're one of the moms that kind of cared, whether it be preparing food or, just cheering or driving a bus or, all these little things that you
Uh-huh.
did that people get to see in the limelight. So I want to say thank you for that, ahead of time. But
You're welcome.
what I'll say, the other question I have is, what made our group special, do you think, in your eyes collectively?
I don't know. I can't pinpoint it. I knew that I cared about you all and that you guys cared about me, especially after my car accident. I mean, you guys were there for me. You know what I mean? I always wanted to know how I was and, you know, I don't know. I just felt like, you guys wanted me around and it just made me happy.
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? Like you became part of the family, just like we talked about. LCA became that family, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Dynamic and kind of opened up a lot of doors for a lot of people. So
Yeah.
honestly, kind of going to that, you said you was always around. What do you remember most about us going through football and basketball or just sports in general? Like what was your highlight? What did you remember at all or anything like that? You can care to share anything you like.
I don't know. I just liked hanging out with y'all, No whether it was stories. Huh? No embarrassing stories. Yeah.
My embarrassing story.
Well, because you guys were just a fun group, You weren't always fighting or, it was
Yeah.
just fun to be around you all. We had a lot of fun on the buses and I had one rule, I don't care how loud you are, but you better be sitting down because if I see you in my mirror, you're in big trouble. I remember doing that all the time, because that was a no-no in my books, getting up and moving around. That,
Yeah.
but I didn't care how loud you were, if you were cheering, if you were, singing, I didn't care,
Yeah.
that was always fun. The road trips, I call them, in
Yeah.
the bus and stuff, and helping you guys out at camp was real fun. I really liked that, even though you guys were so tired because they were working you to death. And, I love that, and just watching you guys, watching you guys become teams from nothing. You know what I mean? It's just a bunch of boys they throw together and then you learn you learn all about each other and you could play just about anything, whether it was soccer, basketball, soccer, football. It was the same group of boys that were doing all the sports, and it was just fun to watch you guys and watch you grow and.
And I think you said the key thing and people don't realize you said boys we came from nothing. You know, a lot of people don't realize that when we came to LCA, the whole side, the whole basketball court, the building, none of that was up. You know, it was just a whole downhill, just like a
Yeah.
steep hill down to the side. And so we had the
Uh-huh.
whole school on the other wing, you know what I mean, like the elementary wing they call it now, basically. And so we didn't really have a lot of resources. So we was like traveling to the armory or like go to Marshall White or all these other places just to find a facility to practice. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
and then it was into our senior year to where we opened up the gym and finally brought the whole winning culture to LCA that senior year. But like coming from
Mm-hmm.
nothing, like you said, buses breaking down, you know, to football games. We have to switch, you know what I mean? Like stop and take the vans and doing all these different things. People don't realize what kind of went into
Yeah.
everything behind the scenes to kind of make
It's
everything
like,
happen.
one practice was at Marshall White. The other practice was at the Armory. The other practice was somewhere up by Weber State one time, just wherever they could get,
Yeah.
a basketball court that was empty that, would allow our school to practice there, So, but the coaches worked on all that stuff too, in the school and trying to get to where, the teams could practice and yeah.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
I just went wherever they sent me. I just said, okay, we're going to Marshall White. Okay, everybody in the van, let's go,
Yeah. Pack
you
it like
know?
a can of sardines. We're off to after Marshall
Yeah.
White.
And
So
all I would tell the boys is, wear your seat belts and no garbage on the floor.
yeah,
You
most
know,
definitely.
I had my little rules that the boys obeyed. You know what I mean? It's like, you
Yeah.
can't do this, you can't do that. No cussing on my van, just
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah, it's just the little stuff, you know what I mean? But still be a kid, but just know, you know, you gotta watch your tone space
Yeah, you
for
just
these.
have, there's certain things, that you have to do. So,
Yeah. So during that time, what would you say? Do you remember at what point would you recall that we started becoming young adults instead of kids anymore? Was there like a correlation at some point where he's like, oh man, these boys are becoming young men right now instead of being kids?
no, y'all seem to settle down by the time you were in 10th grade, about 10th grade, somewhere right in there. So, what would you be, about 16 maybe?
Yeah,
About,
about because it was
yeah,
14, yeah, 15, yeah,
Yeah,
15, 14.
y'all seem to be
Yeah,
settling down a little bit, and then it really took effect when, like at the games and stuff, you guys were wearing suit and ties. And I'm just like, wow, you weren't little kids anymore. It's like, okay, yeah, they're getting older,
yeah,
even, not only in the height, everybody was starting to get some height on them and a little bit of bulk, instead of
yeah,
these scrawny little things. But I don't know. Even with my son, I think he grew like 6 inches in one summer in
yeah,
height. You know what I mean? So it's like all of a sudden I'm looking at these, young men instead of little boys, and you guys were acting more, not so childish. You still had fun, and
Yeah,
still laughed and still joked around and stuff, but it was a little bit different, you know. And for me, I'd never had a son that age. And, Bud was in the group too. So,
yeah,
it was just like, I was like totally amazed, wow, these guys are something else. So it was kind of
yeah,
nice.
yeah. And I think kind of the correlation to that, and I don't know if you recall this or not, because you remember seventh, eighth grade years. Those are the years that kind of was trying to find ourselves, find our identity. Then like the sophomore years when we had that season to remember, we cleaned house that year. It was like winning games by like 20
Mm-hmm.
points. And had, like, yeah, that year. And then freshman
Yeah.
year was like all the stuff that's happening, like me getting kidnapped and all that stuff like that. And then so that came to my
Uh,
sophomore year. So like you said, that's when everything kind of started happening. We started kind of putting a staple on everything when we're super ties to the games, represent ourselves, like our families, everything like that. And with Coach Porter, that was like the
uh-huh.
vision he had. And that kind of came to fruition. So and I think that played an intricate
Yeah,
part. And
and I had never really heard, Bobby Porter's vision, but I could see the change,
yeah,
with how much I was around you boys. I could see,
yeah,
and I thought it was great. He's really, this is working,
yeah,
whatever it is that Bobby Porter's teaching them, it's working.
yeah,
Because I saw you guys on an everyday basis,
yeah.
not just at the games. So for me, I had a bigger advantage to know what was going on with y'all. But I don't know. It was just nice for me to watch.
Yeah. And I think Coach Porter came in with a plan. And also, I did the interview with him as well, too, another podcast, but you kind of shared where that kind of the idea of the Renaissance man came from. You know what I mean? So I think that opened up a
Mm-hmm.
lot of eyes on a lot of things. And so it's something he carried out. And so it played it, like you said, it worked. You know what I mean? He came with a vision, a game plan, and he formulated it and he executed. It kind of worked out for a
Mm-hmm.
lot of us. So that kind of became where it taught all of us how to become winners, and how to represent ourselves as
Yeah.
Renaissance men as well, and just kind of be
Mm-hmm.
polite in everything we do, not just in the facet of sports, but in life as well too. So I was gonna say, so with all that being said, thanks for your perspective. So going back to like high school, obviously in our encounter, what would your perception of perspective of me growing up with me be, me as an individual?
I'm trying to remember you when you first got to this, when I first met you, you were pretty standoffish, and I don't know why, you know what I mean? I go, why
Yeah,
is you wanted to be by yourself a lot, right. That very first year, you know,
yeah,
and I didn't know why, but I thought, you know what, I remember us having a few talks, that year, and I knew you were struggling and I knew you were having a hard time. I didn't know if just fitting in or whatever, because I didn't know a whole lot about your background at that time, but I don't know. I just made myself available to a lot of different people that I felt might need a hug or something or whatever, that was just me. I was the mom that hugged, you know what I mean? If,
yeah,
if I felt one of you was down, I'd say, are you okay? Or,
yeah,
that's just me. I do that now, even where I'm living. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Because, I live in assisted living now and I do that with the people that live here. There's sometimes they just have bad days. They're sad or whatever. And,
Yeah.
that's just the way I am, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, no, it's just just a caring person in you. You know what I mean? You always want to look out for everybody else. And I think a
Hmm.
lot of people don't realize what I went through that first, even like that first year LCA, but everything that kind of led up to coming to LCA. And also I kind of shared a little bit with a lot of people, but most people don't know I was born in Columbus, Ohio. And then so I moved to Nigeria when I was young with my mother. And so I stayed in
Hmm.
Nigeria for 10 years. And I spoke 9 different dialects. And English wasn't one of them. So at 10 years old, I come back to America, was something else. I was born here as a citizen, but it became a whole foreign terrain for me. So then the moment I got here, it was like 3.5 months, 4 months, not even 3.5 months that I got abused and neglected and sent out to foster care, so it was like a whole different training for me. So I was bounced around different homes, going to different people's homes. And so it was like all different new rules, new regulations. And I would like not get fed food. And people told me, you're stupid, you're dumb. Like, so teachers isolated me in corner classrooms. And so I fought a lot. Kids would bully me. I had so many stories from like Sunset Elementary to Hillfield to Clinton that, it kept on happening, So I had some instances where I got expelled just for no reason. It wasn't because of me, because the kids would bully me. And then the moment I told them to stop, they wouldn't. So I beat them up. Then I became the problem. I was the
Uh-huh.
aggressor, etc. So, and that was the odd one out. Basically, we talked about, the color my skin, whatever, being an African American student in school and things like that, especially in Utah at the time. And so it was like a lot of combination of things that happened. And so that's how LCA happened my seventh grade year before I came to LCA. And so like when I came to LCA, I was like, bro, I'm tired of people. You know what I mean? And I was away from my mom. I was away from my family from Nigeria. So I went
Mm-hmm.
those 5 years talking to my mom one time on the phone. I didn't get to see no family, no relatives, nobody. So I was like, bro, like all these people around me are all strangers, but where my family at? You know, so I was in and out of court, left and right for a kid at that time, that age is like in and out of court. I didn't get a chance to be a kid. I couldn't even do anything. It was like, dealing with
Yeah.
custody about my family. Where's my mom? Where's my grandfather? And everything I had known from Nigeria was taken away from me. You know what I mean? And so at the time, it wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
you can pick up the phone, like, hey, mom, like, how are you? Like, it was a whole different process at the time.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the combination. Everything that kind of went into that. And so like I was very standoffish and I was so pissed off because people would always blame me for everything. Something go missing in their house. Oh, you stole it. You did it. I didn't. Yes, you did. You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, like fine, whatever. So I started lashing out. So, but no, that kind of went on towards seventh grade and kind of it was like some of the struggles, whatever. So that kind of led to all the issues I kind of had my first year, trying to figure out a lot of people. I was very reserved, trying to observe people, watch people who was actually really there for the right reasons because, my
Mm-hmm.
background showed me that even family or blood will get you sometimes to get their outcome. So I kind of lost trust in a lot of people,
Yeah.
and that's
Well,
what that kind of
the
happened.
trust part.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have to trust somebody enough to
Yeah.
trust is very
So
important when you're younger. Yeah.
yeah, it was very earned, and then for me, it was like, the only example I can give is like taking like a wine glass or like a glass and shattering it, right? And then you can put the pieces back together, but the glass will never fully be perfect all around because it's still gonna have like the little ridges and the cuts around it. And
Uh-huh.
so once that trust is broken, that's just how I always look. So a lot of people broke my trust. So to me, I'm like, I'm not gonna let you back on premises. You know what I mean? Like because you already showed me your true self, who
Yeah.
you are. So I was like, give people like a one and done chance to school over. Okay, bye. Like I'm not gonna talk to you. Don't come next to me type of thing. That was my mentality at the time to kind of protect my peace, at the time. And so that's where everything kind of correlated to that. So kind of get into a little bit more now that you like know a little bit more or whatnot. What would you say? What strengths did you see in me throughout that process from seventh grade all throughout when we finished out? Like, did you see in myself? I guess you say.
What did I see in you?
Not yeah, as far as like strengths or anything. Like,
Yeah, I don't know. I was pretty observant, you know what I mean? And I don't know, you were pretty standoffish, but, it seemed like, I don't know, whenever Bobby Porter needed somebody to do whatever that, it seemed like you would always step up. You know what I mean?
yeah,
You would step up. I mean, I think the guys respected you. I know that. So I don't know. It's hard to say because I was just watching all you boys at the same time in all your different ways, growing up, you know, just how, I don't know. I don't know. I was just having fun watching you.
yeah. No, there's nothing wrong with that. No, that's what I said. It's all about just having that fun, And I think for me, I know the strength I saw in myself, just the ability to keep pushing forward. You know what I mean? I know everything I
Yeah,
dealt with as a kid.
you were pretty determined. I know that,
Yeah,
especially where football was concerned.
man.
You know,
Yeah,
your foot,
I had to.
yeah, you were pretty determined. I mean, it's like, I don't know. You had a lot of grit. Let's put it that way.
No, that football was. I'm not gonna lie to you. Football was kind of how I felt like I got all that anger out, all that pain out,
Uh-huh.
all that frustration out, because it was like something I can just use my ability. Because me, I was fast, but I had an injury in my foot that kind of messed me up. So I wasn't running at full speed. It's basically having like a V8, but I was like only using four cylinders of a V8. But like I was
Uh,
still running fast. I was still doing all these things like this, but my foot was messed up, and I had an injury my freshman year, my thumb they kind of correlated to later on down the life kind of affect my, my abilities and whatnot. But I felt like I used football as my canvas, basically. I mean, kind of paint everything. Every time I touched the rock, I was like, I'm taking this 60 yard. I'm going to the house every time. That was my mentality all the time. So that kind of
well,
carried
yeah.
out throughout that.
Me with my car accident and all, I mean, I was determined that I was not gonna, have to stay in a wheelchair. I mean, I didn't like it, but it takes determination. You gotta, even if you don't feel like doing something, you still got to do it.
Yeah.
You got to get up in the morning. You got to go to the rehab center. You got to, I was in rehab for 6 months after my car accident, and then still had to use my wheelchair part time for like the next 6 months after I came home,
Yeah.
So it just, a lot of people said that, they saw my determination. I mean, I remember senior night on the football field, I was bound and determined that I was going to walk with my son, when they introduced us, So I
Yeah.
practiced and tried to get as strong as I could. I mean, they had to have my wheelchair behind me, but I was bound and determined that, I wanted to be like the other parents and be able to walk, with my son because I was proud of him,
Yeah.
I wanted him to be proud of me, so that was a special night, watching all the boys with their parents, or whoever. And I just wanted to be a part of that. And I didn't want to be on the sidelines. I never wanted to be on the sidelines. I always wanted to have my hand in there somehow,
Hands on. No, that went a long way. And that's why I said, like, it just shows your determination of, everything you went through as far as just like I talk about my resilience. It shows your resilience to kind of bounce back and kind of be with the group. A
Mm-hmm.
lot of people, you don't realize how much impact you made because there's select few people that were always there with us from thick and thin. You know what I mean? Even the
Uh-huh.
ups, the lows, highs and lows throughout everything was kind of still there throughout the process and you still made it work. So that goes to show a lot of who you are as a person. And it goes to show who your determination was too as well. So thank you for that as well too. But no, it gave us a
You're
lot of
welcome.
glimpse of hope. Yeah. So I was gonna go into, I don't know if you remember senior year or not. What was your take on our senior year? Because I don't know if you remember, we started off, kind of hot, basically, and then that's when Coach Bus got fired and all the stuff like that. So I don't know, what do you remember about anything of those natures? What do you remember about that time?
Remember a little bit, as far as, I know that together as a team, you guys were great. Bud didn't play as much that season, senior year. He had some physical stuff going on, but he still was included in everything.
Yeah,
Even when you won the state championship that year, all the guys pulled him up there too. You know what I mean? Even though he hadn't played much,
yeah,
Football, I didn't remember too much as far as, but I always knew that, something good was going to come out of something because how well you guys worked together as a team, it was teamwork. It wasn't like so and so did one, this and so did that. It's like you all together. It took all of you
yeah,
to win, not
yeah,
just one of you. So, and you learn that. I mean, like in seventh grade, it's like you all wanted to be the big hot dog. You know what I mean? You wanted to be the one to make the basket that won. You wanted to be the, not you yourself, but team wise,
yeah,
it was kind of like a me, at the very beginning.
yeah,
But, once you guys knew what each other's abilities were, you worked great together, as a team, which that's what it takes, It doesn't matter what you're doing, whether it's sports or whatever. If you don't have a good team, that relies on each other and knows each other, if it's not a team, then you're going to have a lot of trouble,
yeah,
So I did notice all that,
yeah. No, that's great because I remember the senior year was probably like the best season we had because obviously I started with LCA. My freshman year, obviously I was kidnapped, so I missed like 3 months of school. I didn't come back till like
Uh-huh.
October, so I missed the beginning of the football season. So that's when the year Coach Russell started our football program. And then sophomore year, we had,
Mm-hmm.
he left, had a coaching changes. Then I had another coach junior year. Then also senior year, we had Coach Luss and Coach Will and all them come in that senior year. And so that senior
Mm-hmm.
year was the year I kind of like banked on winning everything. So I was like, okay, we finally got an NFL coach coming to be our coach. I was like, my dream actually playing in the league. It's finally, going to happen. So I kind of put all my eggs into
Uh-huh.
that basket. That's why I played so hard that senior year. And I don't know if you remember, he started off hot, was like 4-0, 3-0 or something like that. And then we ended up having to getting ready to go to Duchesne. And it was like one of the biggest games of the season we were supposed to play that year. And then Coach Gus gets fired like 4 games into the season. And then we had a Coach Will kind of step in. So it was like a lot of moving pieces. So I'm like, man, like we lost like four
Mm-hmm.
games straight from that point on. And then the game we're going to talk about right now is the Canab game here in a second. But we had a game at the end of the season. It was either win or go home. And I remember I have like Mr. Miller gave me like the sequence of plays. I remember playing tailback. I bounce outside. The dude comes inside. I remember just jumping over two people to put a football across and kind of send us to the state playoff history and school history.
Uh-huh.
And I remember seeing like Buzz, Cleature, like all of them right there. I'm like, man, like I'm just looking like so crazy. So going to Canab, I don't know if you remember this or not, and you wrote that letter. So do you have that letter with you right now
I
to the
do.
team? Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
still
I
have it.
remember
It's
that
like
mem-
20-something years old, but I have it.
Yeah, it's crazy, right? And so, and here in a second, if you don't mind, I don't mind if you don't mind just reading to the audience here in a second. But I remember just kind of diving the kind of sent to the playoff, and I was so excited. I'm like, bro, like it took all these years to finally get a playoff appearance after all these 4 years, like the moving pieces that just kind of make things happen.
Uh-huh.
And so this goes to show you the example of the motivation, dedication, everybody, and belief everybody had in all of us. And so I remember with like sending us to the playoff, first school playoff history in school history. And so I remember you writing that letter. And I remember us writing down there, not because of your injury, you couldn't be there. And so I remember coaches reading that letter to us in the locker room. I'm like, man, like, people really care about us. You know what I mean? Like, this is just, it went a long way because I know me personally sitting in the locker room, I'm like, okay, like, we gotta go. You know what I mean? Like, if we would have had more pieces, it would have been fine. But I was like, we gotta go. So do you mind just reading that to the audience if you still have it?
I'm sure. I said, my dear football boys, thank you so much for letting me help out the team this year. It has meant so much to me to be able to feel like I could still be a useful and helpful person again. It made me forget about my struggles and what a joy it has been for me. It didn't matter what I was doing, whether it was at Camp Paradise putting medicine on blisters and skinned up arms and knees, spraying you all down with mosquito spray, cooking at camp and feeding you all on Thursdays. I am so proud of you all. Who would have ever thought that the group of ball dropping, rope tripping, non-listening klutzes could have become the team you are today? You've overcome a lot of obstacles to get here. God has blessed you all with great, caring coaches to guide you and that care about your life on and off the field. Just remember that pride comes not from how many games you win, but from giving your 110% to the team, striving together with dedication to get that win. I know what it's like to keep going even when your body is aching and you're tired and feeling defeated, but strive on to achieve your goal, whether it's winning a big game or for me, it's being able to walk again. Feeling defeated and giving up are not an option. You know the goal ahead of you tonight. Strive hard for it, as I'll be doing the same on Tuesday with my 4th operation. Show that team at Kanab that we have eagle pride. Remember that the game is never over until the final whistle blows. A little note for my longtime boys. You know who you are. What a joy and pleasure it has been to watch you grow into the awesome young men you are today. The love and respect you have shown me makes my heart overflow. Any of you I would be proud to call my own. Loving, caring, and praying for you always, Miss Ruthie.
Say it's just like it was yesterday. You know what I mean? Just like sitting there just before a
Uh-huh.
game. I remember just sitting in that locker room with coaches like, reading that letter. Like I said, it just seemed like just yesterday. I'm just sitting there like, okay, like, man, we got really people behind us. You know what I mean? Because it was like a first playoff appearance. I'm like, man, like, we really got to go hard. So I know me personally, I left it all in that field. I know we didn't really have the resources or the numbers like, Canab had, but like I
Uh-huh.
said, I know I left it all on that field during that day, which kind of like that kind of correlated to basketball season. I remember it, like we came in on a mission. All these 3 years we should have won state, but like that kind of
Uh-huh.
correlated. Hey, we gotta go out with a bang. You
But
know what I
you
mean?
got
Like,
you got like basketball, you got like second place, like how many years in a row? Like 3, and you
yeah,
were trying to get that
back
number
to
1
back to
spot.
back.
And
Yeah.
you just kept practicing and getting better and better. I did notice that. So,
Yeah. And then the senior year was just like the icing on the cake. We just told each other when we sat there, said a core group of us say, you know what? Hey, man, this is '07. You know what I mean? This is our class. We got to go out with a bang. We got to be the ones to kind of set that
uh-huh,
pillar and kind of set that example for everybody else. And so we came in, we just started blowing teams out. We were running constantly. Like, you know what I mean? Finally had our gym. You know what I
uh-huh,
mean? They built the gym that senior year, put everything together. It was like, man, we just need some resources. We just need some stuff. And so once we got a little
yeah.
taste of it, we ran off and cleaned house that year. So kind of going to that senior year, do you think that we were destined to kind of win it that year from what you saw from your perspective throughout the years to that senior year for basketball?
I was hoping, hoping and praying because you guys had worked together, so hard for so long, that, that's what I was praying for y'all, that you'd be able to win. Yeah.
Yeah. So what was your take on obviously when we started winning and making because we won Region 17 all these years, you know what I mean? But kind of going to that and kind of going throughout the playoffs. When we kind of got to that state championship game, what was your thought process behind it? Even when the game kind of started, what was your thoughts and do you feel like what was the parents' thoughts or like the outsider thoughts going into that game?
I think everybody was just, pretty anxious, you know what I mean? Because they really wanted it for you guys, you know what I mean? The parents, the teachers, the coaches, there was a lot of people there. And, we were just hoping, hoping and praying that this would be the winning year for you,
No, and I think yeah, it was great because how we put everything together, just how everything played out. Like I remember like the last little bits, like the last deal to putting everything together, because I remember the junior year, our junior year, we had just gained momentum in the third quarter, and I blew my knee out, and somebody
Mm-hmm.
took a cheap shot because they used to hate us, like all the time we just come in with the suits and just kind of be all class and stuff like that. So I remember they took a cheap shot, popped my knee out, and I was so mad, I was so disappointed because I'm like, man, I let my team down. This is the year we're supposed to win it all again, and we had gained momentum in the third
Mm-hmm.
quarter until the fourth quarter when we really turned up the notch and start putting the press on. And so I was like, man, so we're going to senior year, everything just kind of happened, just kind of came out together. And like just when that final buzzer bell rung and we won that state championship, what are your thoughts about that moment?
I don't know. I was just as excited like everybody else,
Yeah,
you
crazy,
know?
right?
Yeah.
But no, it was like I said, that was a combination of everything else. And so when we won that state championship, obviously Coach Porter became the first African American coach to win it in the state of Utah. And we were
Mm-hmm.
the first private school to win it in the state of Utah. So we broke a lot of barriers. BJ had like this, the most points, like the scoring title, all this. So we had a lot of things that kind of went into that. We had a very
Uh-huh.
diverse team. That was the moment that made us become winners. And then everybody started noticing. And, even though some of the parents were, man, you guys did a good job with these kids because we talk about us wearing suits and just kind of being, Renaissance
Uh-huh.
men and things like that. A lot of people are like, okay, yeah, they came, they saw, and they conquered. You know what I mean? Especially after all these years. And you could just see it in the building where the kids would come watch us doing warm ups, going lives, dunking and do, oh my God, we would have done just like that. So everything just kind of came together and put the pieces together
Uh-huh.
collectively. So it was like all like a master class of everything's supposed to happen. So collectively, we're overall winning the state championship. What would you say motherhood has taught you collectively as a person?
I don't know. I mean, you always hope that you're going to be a good mother, but you don't know until that time comes and you have certain
Yeah.
situations that you have to deal with. I mean, it was a little bit rough in our situation because I was a single mom, and trying to work, and wanted my kids to get the best education, and I wanted him to be around Christian men, that could help him become a great man. You know what I mean? Or,
Yeah.
somebody that, loved the Lord, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm just like, so I feel blessed being able to be at LCA, and having that chance, to where I can, take care of my kids, and you learn a lot too when, like with me, I wasn't too sure how everybody at the school thought about me until I had my car accident, and then I knew, in my opinion, the car accident was God's way of telling me to let people help me. You know what I mean? So, I needed to rely on other people to help me do what I needed to do, where I thought I could do it all by myself, but you can't. You can't do everything by yourself. So, but nowadays I just say, Lord, get me through the next day. And that's how I pretty much live now. It is what it is. There's some things you can change, some things you can't, and just rely on the Lord to help you, change what you can. That's just the way I look at life. So, keeps me cheerful anyways.
So you always gotta look forward to the next day. You know what I mean?
Yep.
That's a blessing to look at it that way. So what advice would you give to young athletes nowadays if you can go back and talk to young athletes coming up now?
Probably listen to the coaches, because a lot of them think, well, I mean, the times are different now, so it's kind of hard to say, but, I would just say, listen, because there's wisdom. They have wisdom. It doesn't mean just in the sport itself, but just, things that they've gone through that they can look back on and they have learned from it and share it with the players, I don't know. That's the way I would look at it,
Hey, yeah,
you
thanks
know?
for sharing that. So yeah, and I think a lot of athletes feel like they can't, like put their trust in the coach, like you said, but coaches have examples. I mean, sometimes you gotta be in the right situation, right? But overall, you gotta listen to people who came before you because they have some knowledge and kind of some experience to kind of share towards that,
Uh-huh.
right? So what do you hope that our generation carries with us moving forward? Like in our group of your guys, that when we kind of grew through each other, through everything we've been through, well, what's something that you want us to kind of carry moving forward, like our generation carry moving forward?
I don't know. That's a hard one. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, because a lot of I haven't talked to a lot of the boys. I mean, I try to keep up with them on Facebook and such, and I know you've gone on to do great things too. And my son, being a chaplain assistant, and that kind of was a shocker for me, but you know what I mean. It's just, but to use what they've learned. Don't just keep it hidden. I mean, if you've learned something good, then share it with your kids if you have kids, or you can't. If you learned, you learn for a reason. It's not just to keep it to yourself. It's to where you can help others with that, or maybe you've been in a certain situation and this is what helped you, and then you share that with somebody else, like you, even with your podcast. You know what I mean? It's people could be watching your podcast and go, oh yeah, this is what he's gone through, but look what he's done, or look what the Lord's done with him, and just to be able to, I don't know, I'm just proud of how all you boys turned out. you
Just say
know
it could have been completely different story. No, that's a great
yeah,
insight, and I think the biggest thing you said was just kind of using our gifts or the experiences we've kind of went through in life and kind of show it somebody else. Because sometimes a lot of us don't realize this. Our troubles and problems and things we go through could be somebody else's roadmap to be very successful. Because I know for me, like sharing my story or talking to people, even like my books that I wrote, a lot of people reach out to me like, man, like I take my life for granted, because I thought my life was worse. But then I hear about your story and then you out here smiling and, doing all this. And I'm like, yeah, life, you know what I mean? I'm like, yeah, life
uh,
happens to you, but it's not how, you
yeah,
go about it, it's how you react to life, because I could have given all throughout the times, everything I went through from being kidnapped to Nigeria, left there with no passport my first year and missing 3 months of school, then had to figure the whole process out. You know what I mean? Going through foster care for 5 years, talked to my mom one time in
yeah,
5 years, with her family. I could have been a statistic, but I was like, you know what? Like, this is not my final destination. That one day I'll be able to kind of manifest my greatness. So that's why I work so hard. That's why I played so hard. You know what I mean? We talk about football field, I use my
yeah,
anger and everything out to kind of just
uh,
get everything out. You know what I mean? And now that I'm doing a podcast, I'm working on book number 2. There's other things that I'm working on. You know what I'm saying, that people don't even know about just yet, but it's for me to kind of give back, like my gift to life, I guess you can call it, because somebody else is
yeah,
using that as a God map for them to be successful. So I'll save a lot of people's life from committing suicide or, doing things like literally just by just, hey, like, are you okay? Like, you know what I mean? Just asking those questions and
yeah,
kind of taking because
yeah.
I see the red
Yeah,
signs
well,
of,
most people just want to know that somebody gives a crap. You know what I mean?
yeah, that's
That
literally
they
it.
care about,
That's
that they care about you.
yeah, yeah, and
That
that's
there is somebody out there that actually cares.
and so yeah, so in that perspective, so if you can go back to us being teenagers, right? What is a piece of advice or something you can tell? What would you tell all of us again? What would you tell us now if you can go back to us
What would
being
I tell you
teenagers?
now?
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, me, I don't know. What I've learned in the last little while is just to be myself. Don't try to be like somebody else. And if you're having trouble, you need to find somebody and talk to them. You know what I mean? And they might not be able to help you, but at least you would get it off your chest by telling somebody.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just made myself available to you boys, if you want, because I had talks with a lot of different ones, about all kinds of things. And if I didn't know, how to answer them, then I would try to figure out who to send them to talk to, or,
Yeah.
I don't know. I can't really pinpoint what I would say, to the
Yeah.
teenagers, but I don't know. I just let the Lord lead in whatever I was doing, to help you all.
Yeah. And I
I don't
think,
know.
and
It's hard to
Nothing.
say,
I mean, yeah, I know it's hard. Sometimes it's hard to kind of put in words, but I think what I take from what you probably say is just probably be present, because a lot of things for us, you try to major way to kind of be present in everything we did. When if
Uh-huh.
you had long days still, but then you're still present for the games, you're still present for all of us, and you still made yourself available, and that's kind of
Yeah.
what I'm taking from it all. Is like, hey, like try to be there for somebody that doesn't have, like you saw all the problems firsthand, what all of us were kind of going through at the time, right? And so you made
Uh-huh.
yourself available. It's not like you didn't tell me what's going on. You know what I mean? Like, no, hey, if you ever want to talk, come talk to me. Kind of open up that space so people feel comfortable to come talk to you. Just like the motherly presence alone.
Uh-huh.
And that kind of
Yeah.
played in factor as well too. You know what I mean? But I think that's my takeaway from from your perspective, just kind of opening yourself to people to come talk to you, and kind of, it could be about anything. It could be life, it could be sports, it could be, just anything in general. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's kind of my takeaway. As far as that goes, so obviously we're, at the end of the podcast. Is there anything else you want to share with the listeners, or anything from any memories or any funny stories or anything collectively as
Not
far as anything you want to say?
not really. No, I'm just glad I can remember a lot,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Every time I think of my boys, I don't know, my heart just starts smiling.
Yeah.
I don't know what I can't, the feeling, you know what I mean? It's like, and I often wonder where some of them every now and then I know kind of what they're doing because of now the Facebook and all, but I'm not very techno. So I just
Yeah.
kind of, have some of the boys are my friends on Facebook. So, I can see what they've been doing. And so that's about the only way I keep in touch with anybody right now,
Yeah.
but that's what a lot of people, it's just whatever they see on Facebook or, someone messages or, yeah. But I live in an assisted living. So if any of my boys that live close by want to come see me,
Yeah, I'll definitely have to, like I said, next time I pop into Utah, I'll definitely reach out for sure. It's been a while since
yeah,
I've been out there, but I'm trying to finish my little documentary and stuff. So I got to make
yeah,
some stops, along the way, and kind of make everything kind of happen. So I'll definitely have to stop by.
yeah,
So I've been advocate of, I mean, even like that's the reason I kind of put a podcast together, is kind of like connect all the dots, connect all the stories
uh-huh,
together. So we all have something, because a lot of people don't realize the impact they've made in others. So that's kind of like why I was kind of wrap up everything and say, yeah, thank you for everything you've done. This is coming from me, and I know I speak for everybody else, that you kind of helped, from driving the buses to Solid Christian Academy to the LCA, being at the games, to, being the mom of the team, to the Thursday night meals, to being in paradise, the camps, all the
mhm,
ups and downs. I know from the bottom of my heart, personally, I want to thank you for everything you've done, for your presence, for even, bringing Bud, to Layton Christian Academy, like kind of bringing Aaron to, like just a whole family that there, and kind of build that bond, that
uh-huh,
camaraderie, just kind of being who you are throughout the years. That's for me personally, but I know collectively for everybody else, from the Lyman Bangers to Jordan Millers to, everybody else you kind of served throughout the process. We want to tell you thank you for everything you've done. I know I speak for everybody
yep,
else too,
thank
but
you.
thank you, you know.
Was my
So
pleasure.
yeah, for sure. And so for everybody that's listening, thank you guys for tuning in. Obviously, Miss Ruthie, she played an intricate part in a lot of our success. She did a lot of behind the scenes work, from driving the buses to and from, being there as a noble parent, as a staff, as a supporter, a mentor, a role model, somebody we kind of looked up to as well. So if this kind of touched your heart, make sure you share with somebody else that needs to hear it too as well. So this is why we go beneath the surface. Thank you guys for tuning in.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of Beneath the Surface. If today's conversation encouraged you, challenged you, or inspired you, I'd appreciate it if you subscribed, left a review, and shared this episode with someone who needs to hear it. Every share helps these stories reach someone who may need hope today. Until next time, keep showing up, keep growing, and remember, every person has a story. There's always more beneath the surface. I'm DJ Lester. I'll see you on the next episode.